Welcome to this video on lymphoma leukemia, which is being done as part of an awareness program, as September is considered to be the Lymphoma Leukemia Awareness Month. Now, this decision was taken by the Congress in the United States in the year 2010, and I think it's an excellent move because it is imperative that we are able to convey a significant amount of awareness to our population on this topic of leukemia lymphoma, as it contributes to significant morbidity and mortality. And why we want people to be aware? Because we want people to come to us in time, because lymphomas, if diagnosed earlier in a lesser stage, they do far better than those who come to us with advanced stage. And unfortunately, in our country, that's in India, the number of people who come to us with lymphoma are the ones who have got younger age than the West. They have got more type B symptoms, that means they're more symptomatic. That means they're detected only after they are unwell. And they have got advanced stage of the disease. Therefore, I think it's important that we let people know that if you get certain symptomatologies that I'm going to discuss with you, it is wiser to take an opinion of a physician so that it can be diagnosed, if at all it is there, in time. The epidemiology of leukemia and lymphoma is hard to give in our country because we don't have a very well all over the country established registry, although there are some registries on, but generally we don't get the true information from across the country as to how much is the incidence of leukemia lymphoma. Now let's talk about lymphoma first, and we'll follow up with leukemia simultaneously for each point of discussion. Lymphoma. Why does a person get a lymphoma? We don't know. There are some gene changes that take place, and these gene changes are responsible for a disease process. And we know that from cancer genomics that there are certain genes which lead to one type of cancer. The same gene may be responsible for different types of cancer, but it manifests in a particular way depending upon which pathway it takes. So really we don't know why that gene has taken place, the change has taken place. It can be a deletion, it can be a mutation, it can be inversion, it can be duplication, it can be triplication, it can be loss of a chromosome. There are several genetic factors responsible. Most of the times they are acquired, that means they are somatic mutations, but sometimes there are also germline mutations which you are born with, and that can also give rise to leukemia lymphoma, albeit at a younger age then. Anyway, overall in our country it appears that lymphoma especially seems to be occurring at a much younger, at least a decade younger than the Western population. So it's imperative in lymphoma to make a proper diagnosis, because in our country, when lymphadenopathy, that means enlargement of the lymph glands, take place, the commonest reason thought is tuberculosis. And people start taking TB treatment. Today's world is an evidence-based medicine world. Before we give any medication to anybody, we have to be confident of our diagnosis. Therefore, I urge the people who are listening to me, and of course my colleagues know about this, that whenever we have got lymphadenopathy, if it's painful, it's more likely to be infected. But if it's painless and it's not going off, then it should be appropriately biopsied. Now, FNAC we don't believe in. We would like to do an excision biopsy. That means we want to remove the entire lymph node and get it analyzed. Why do I want that? I want this because once you remove the entire lymph node, if that's possible, then we can analyze the whole lymph node in detail. Because today lymphoma has got different categories in it. It is a low-grade lymphoma, it is an intermediate-grade lymphoma, high-grade lymphoma, and the immunohistochemistry are tests which are done on the paraffin block of that lymph node biopsy, and it gives us a detailed information. So sometimes what glitters may not be gold, and therefore what looks like a type of lymphoma may actually be something different on the IHC when we do the IHC. Why do we want to know which type of lymphoma? Because today, low-grade lymphomas, intermediate-grade lymphomas, and high-grade lymphomas have not only different methods of treatment, they've got different outcomes and different rates of relapse. So there is no one size of a shoe that fits all. We have to look at the details and find out what exactly is the one that the patient has so that we can treat appropriately. Otherwise, we may be over-treating some and under-treating the others. Likewise for leukemia. There's no proper registry for leukemia in our country, but there are people who are attempting to get data together And we have a very good hematology cancer consortium which is trying to do this. And my best wishes to them to accrue the data so that we can speak more evidence-based in the future. In leukemia also, I am asked, what's the stage of leukemia? Well, blood cancer cells which arise from the bone marrow. So leukemia arises from the bone marrow. They are present all over the body. So it's like a stage 4 disease. You can't stage leukemia. You can prognosticate leukemia. Are they good or bad? So again, here we do the genomic testing. In the genomic testing, we look for other genes which are responsible for this leukemia, good or bad. Yes, you're wondering why I said good. Because there are certain genes which have a good outcome. And therefore, it's worth not only treating with chemotherapy, but then probably not also transplanting. Then there are some genes which are bad. So they may not respond very well to standard treatment, and therefore early relapses take place, and they must probably go in for some form of consolidation, that is transplantation. Now this is about leukemia. Is there a similar staging for lymphoma? Yes, we do a PET CT scan, which is a highly specialized scan. We put a dye called FDG into the body, and we see which areas, which lymph nodes of the body are affected. If in one area, it becomes stage 1. 2 areas, then becomes stage 2. If it's on both sides of the diaphragm, it becomes stage 3. And if it's involvement of the marrow or something outside the lymph node, like the spleen, liver, or any other tissue which is outside the bone marrow, it's called stage 4. And then we have B symptoms, that is fever, weight loss, and night sweats. If you have these and they're not going off, they're persisting, drenching sweats at night, please do meet a doctor, especially if it's associated with itching. These are called type B symptoms. If they are not there, it's called type A. So this is the way we stage lymphomas. We prognosticate leukemias. We think it's genetic in origin. There could be reasons for developing this, and that is prior exposure to chemotherapy, prior exposure to chemicals, radiation. But we really don't know what is the real reason for someone getting a leukemia. For example, how would a child of 1 year old get a leukemia or a lymphoma when it's not even seen anything in the world? So it has to be related to certain genes. We have a very vibrant cancer genomic system which can pick up multiple genetic defects, which will help us to diagnose and monitor, and also tell us whether we are going to do well. Now, in terms of therapy, there is plenty of treatment available. Today's world of lymphoma is divided into 2 types, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and Hodgkin's lymphoma. The non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is further divided into low grade, intermediate grade, and high grade. The Hodgkin's lymphoma is further divided into 4 grades. Now, these subtypes are very important to diagnose on immunohistochemistry because they will determine what kind of treatment we are supposed to give. For example, if you've got an isolated lymph node, the biopsy shows low-grade lymphoma, and the patient is asymptomatic, we may not want to treat. But on the other hand, if the patient has got multiple lymph nodes, they are bulky, that means big in size, and the patient has got symptoms, this treatment has to be given to the patient. Now, which treatment to give? We climb 3 steps. 1, we see the diagnosis. Every form of lymphoma, almost today, has a different kind of therapy. And it's usually an immunochemotherapy, a combination of therapy. And I'll come to it soon. The second step we go up is, what is the patient's performance status? How good is the patient? The therapy that I have in mind, will the patient be able to handle it? And the third step is actual treatment. Just prior to treatment, there is a small step, a mezzanine flow between fitness and therapy. And that mezzanine flow is called counseling. We counsel the patient to tell them that, look, you've got a cancerous disorder, and I want the patient to know that he or she has a cancerous disorder. We should not hide from the patient. Many patients' relatives say, please don't tell, but you'll be surprised that once you tell a diagnosis, how they are able to handle things better, and they are much more positive. And at the end of the day, I deal more with adults, and it's very unfair not to tell an adult that he or she is suffering from cancer. Imagine there are some chemotherapy which cause hair loss, and therefore it will be very imperative that they know that they are taking this treatment. Otherwise, they'll be wondering, why is there hair loss? We can't hide things from them. So I would urge people not to be in denial, to accept the fact that there is cancer and to go ahead with the treatment. Treatment will now vary upon how the patient. It could be targeted immunotherapy. It could be oral target therapy. It could be radiation therapy just to one site if that's the case, which rarely happens in our country. Usually our patients come late to us. And It can be a combination of immunochemotherapy. Sometimes in T-cell lymphoma, we just use chemotherapy. So we all have a kind of an opening partnership or an opening pair which goes in and starts treating the patient with a combination which is almost standard all throughout the world. So generally with this kind of chemotherapy, we expect the patient to go into something called as remission. Remission does not mean cure, it means control. That means your ability to control the disease to such an extent that the standard methodology of diagnosis or determining whether you've got disease no longer exists. That means the disease is much below the limit of your testing facility. But that does not mean you don't have disease, which is why relapses still occur. Again, counseling becomes very important. We must tell the patient that, look, during this treatment, you're going to have ups and downs. You'll take chemotherapy. There'll be hair loss, vomiting, nausea, constipation, diarrhea, effect on the nerves, sometimes effect on the heart, sometimes effect on the lungs. But unfortunately, we will have to go through this so that you become well and you come out on the other side of the tunnel looking bright and good. But during this phase, you might have issues, you might have problems. And therefore, relapse is one of the things. And even if the methodology to detect whether there is disease or not at the end of the therapy shows that there is no disease, we must counsel the patient that there is still a risk of relapse. Ditto in leukemia. Leukemia is divided into acute and chronic. Acute is of two types, acute myeloid and acute lymphoid. There is a third, which is called mixed type of leukemia, which is probably one of the worst to treat. And on the chronic side is chronic lymphatic leukemia and chronic myeloid leukemia as the two main, and there is another one which is called as chronic myeloproliferative neoplasm. So we've got about three on either side of acute and chronic. Again, why do we need to know this? Because the biological behavior of acute lymphatic leukemia is different from that of acute myeloid leukemia, is different from that of acute mixed lineage leukemia. Likewise, in CLL, chronic lymphatic leukemia, CML, chronic myeloid leukemia, and chronic myeloproliferative neoplasm, CMPN, the outcomes and the treatments are different. I'll quickly tell you how. Acute lymphatic leukemia is further characterized on the basis of genetic studies into Philadelphia positive or negative. And then we do additional markers to see whether there are bad prognostic markers. A Philadelphia positive chromosome today in acute lymphatic leukemia is highly treatable. It wasn't so about 10 years ago, but today it is. With the advancements of science, we've been able to take these patients also, which were further in the past given up for good, saying that nothing more can be done for you. You have to transplant, and we used to lose patients. Today, we can transplant them not only better, but we also got drugs to see that even post-transplant, or if they don't want to transplant, we can still maintain them with drugs. Acute myeloid leukemia, standard therapy is chemotherapy. Acute lymphatic leukemia, standard therapy is chemotherapy. Acute undifferentiated or mixed kind of leukemia also has chemotherapy as standard therapy. But in today's world, we realize that some patients who receive these standard treatments don't do well. Why? So we found out from the genetic study through next generation sequencing that these patients have additional markers which are not good for them. And it was the reason why they were not responding. So we are able to now add certain drugs into the armamentarium of the treatment of acute lymphatic and acute myeloid leukemia to enhance our chances of doing well. Acute mixed lineage leukemia usually ends up getting a transplant because they don't do very well. And even the transplant outcomes are not very good, but that's the only hope. A poor prognostication of high risk ALL or high risk AML will also need transplantation. That too allogenic, not autologous, not from your own cell, but from a brother or a sister who's matched by HLA or from an unrelated person who's matched by HLA. That's called MRD, matched related sibling, or it is called as matched unrelated donor, MUD. So these are the two possibilities over here. Now today we also have got something called as haplotransplant. So leukemias can also be treated by haplotransplant, where even if there's a sibling or a parent which is half matched, we can tweak the protocol for conditioning and still do the transplant, and we're getting good results all over the country. So the hope for treatment of leukemia is very high. However, it comes with a high cost. And unfortunately, not many of our patients can handle the chemotherapy. Mind you, chemotherapy is cheap, but the side effects of chemotherapy are very expensive. The blood transfusions, the platelet transfusions, the antibiotics, antifungal, isolation, the number of blood tests, blood donations, blood transfusions, all add significantly to the cost. And that's why it's not possible for everyone to do everything in a given patient of leukemia. However, our best bet is to have a good prognostic in leukemia and to do well on standard chemotherapy and not need transplant. Likewise for lymphoma, have an earlier stage of the disease, be chemosensitive, respond very well, and then not need anything more. Before we end, what happens if a lymphoma were to relapse? Well, we know lymphomas relapse. Diffuse large B-cell lymphoma is the commonest lymphoma in the community, which is about somewhere around 65 to 80% of the times the answer. Follicular lymphoma, probably 20%. Another 5 to 8% will be mantle cell lymphoma, and the low-grade lymphoma is probably around 5%. Now, many times these lymphomas do not get cured. And again, this is where counseling comes in. Because people expect that they have been given chemotherapy, they have spent so much money, they've gone to the best centers, and they have to get the best treatment, and they have actually got with the standard of care that we have all over. But they don't realize that it's their own body, their own genetics, which decides whether it's going to be a relapse. Protocols all over the world are standard. They may be tweaked slightly based on the patient's condition, but generally they're standard all over the world. And therefore, it's more to do with the patient's biology, the patient's immunity, which decides how well he or she is going to do, and whether she's going to go into remission or he's going to go into remission, and whether he or she is going to relapse. Really, we cannot guarantee. I keep telling my patients that we are responsible for the journey once a diagnosis is made towards treatment. But we cannot guarantee the outcome. And I think we'll be lying if we say that we're going to cure everybody. That's really unfair, because there are so many diseases which we can't cure, including the lymphomas and leukemias, especially some of them who have got high or poor prognostic or risk stratification situations. Now today science has advanced to such an extent that not only are we using chemotherapy, we are going to targeted therapy, we are going to oral therapy now. There'll be a day, I'm hoping, maybe 5 years down the line, when IV chemotherapy may not be needed for all cancers. Take the example of CLL, chronic lymphatic leukemia. We've gone to almost an all oral therapy, with ibrutinib being available in its generic form in India. And there's another drug called venetoclax, although not cheap at all and not available in India. But if it comes to India as a generic form in the future, this combination or one or the other is just tremendous in terms of controlling the disease process. We can't cure, but we can control, and without chemotherapy. Anyway, CLL we know is an incurable disease. We can't cure it. We can only get it into a good remission. And if you can get it into minimal residual disease remission, that is MRD negative state, then the patient can remain without progression of disease for a significant period of time. We've got chemotherapy for CLL also. But do all CLLs need treatment? No. Some CLLs need only observation, especially the earlier ones, especially who've got a very good risk stratification. Early disease, not much of lymph nodes, no bulky disease, not big lymph nodes, no liver spleen. The white cell count is high, but the hemoglobin and platelets are fine. They've got no type B symptoms. We leave them alone. We don't treat. We counsel the patient that yes, you've got a blood cancer, but you don't need treatment. Patient finds it very hard to accept. He says, how is it, doctor, that you're saying I've got cancer and you're not giving me treatment? Because in this situation, if I were to give chemotherapy, that has more adverse effects than the disease itself at that point of time. And you have to counsel them that don't rush into treatment for all diseases which are cancerous. You should know how to approach it through risk stratification, find out whether the treatment is necessary for you or not. And it should be done by a professional who has dealt with this kind of situation. And I'm not talking of the internet. I see many patients of mine who go on to Google and try to find out what is to be done for them. Thank God they don't get chemotherapy agents online. Others would be in a mess. Therefore, please see to it that you understand through your doctor, hematologist or oncologist, who will then guide you and explain to you whether it's necessary. CML, just like CLL, it can be diagnosed incidentally. You went for a job profile, you did a health checkup, and you picked up CLL or CML. Completely asymptomatic. CML, we don't wait. Why do we not wait for CML? Why do we wait for CLL? CML, we don't wait because we now know that with the advent of tyrosine kinase inhibitors, TKIs, first generation, second generation, and we are rich in India. We may be perceived as a poor country, but we are rich with 4 TKIs available in our country. Now, when CML is diagnosed, if we treat it in the chronic phase, then the life of that patient can be like any other patient of that age who did not have CML. It's a very important statement. Therefore, diagnosing cancers early, especially CML in the chronic phase, once it goes beyond chronic phase, the outcome is not good. We can treat, but the outcome is not good. We catch them in chronic phase, and they respond well to treatment. then they are likely to live as long as a normal person, which is amazing. Thanks to scientists and our peers who sit in laboratories, give us data, targets, and therapies, and pharma companies who carry out trials, it makes us look good in front of our patients. Thanks to all of them, and we should be indebted to them for the kind of effort they're putting in. For the acute leukemias, there is no such single oral targeted therapy that can make a difference. They need chemotherapy. There's no doubt about that. Chronic myeloproliferative neoplasm, the third type of chronic blood disease, that also has a brilliant drug to control. Initially hydroxyurea, but then there's also another drug called JAK inhibitors. And we've got another drug which is called, one of them which is called as ruxolitinib, which is not curing, but at least it is giving a quality of life and possibly preventing progression of disease. So as an awareness in this program, I have to tell you that diagnose in time by knowing your symptoms, odd symptoms, persistent symptoms. Please do go to your general practitioner or family physician, convey to them your fears and worries, and then get evidence-based tests done through a proper professional, through a proper laboratory, which will kind of guide you to the right answer. And therefore, and from there you can, through your counselor, through your hematologist or oncologist, you can then gauge what kind of disease you have and what kind of treatment, if at all needed, and what are the outcomes. They'll also probably tell you also what the costing is. One last point. Science has advanced to such an extent that beyond autologous, that means self-transplantation, and allogeneic, that means from someone else, a brother, a sister, or unrelated, we now have a new modality of treatment which is called as CAR T cells, chimeric antigen receptor T cells, where your own T lymphocytes are taken out, exposed to your own disease antigen, and reinserted after expansion into your blood for it to go and selectively target the cancerous cells and cause death of those cells. Today, horrendously expensive, but I'm very happy to tell you. In fact, I'm very proud to tell you that we've got at least 4 or 5 doctors and agencies in our country who are working on CAR T. And hopefully in the next 5 years, we'll have that program fully developed in our country to be able to take care of patients of leukemia, lymphoma, and allied disorders who are not responding to standard treatment to take CAR T. And possibly CAR T might come up front also in the future if we do well. So plenty of hopes, but those hopes can be there only if you pick up early. And we can make a difference to you only if you come to us in time. In this country, there is a lot of cultural innovation, fears, and costs which play a role. People come late to us and then expect us to do everything. We are humans. We can only do as well as the science of the patient. But if the science of the patient is advanced, then nothing we can do, including with advanced armamentarium. I hope you are able to understand what I'm trying to convey to you. And it's my best wishes, and I hope none of you get affected by this disease process. But if you do, then please don't shy off it. Face it, and there's lots more we can do for you. Thank you very much for your attention.